Let's say JQuery. Who's a JQuery group? Oh my gosh, I'm so prevalent now. Anyone else hang out with me in Mootools? No? I'm the only one. Yes. I heard a lot of Node.js today. Node.js? Okay. Anyone use something other than those three? No?
Yeah, I have a legacy website that we maintain that's on prototype.js.
Prototype? Okay. Nice.
I would just like to say that Thomas Fox, or however you say his last name, should admit that it's not being maintained anymore.
Very much so. I think there's a whole diverse group here of people who use different frameworks. We just heard about the non-framework today. There's all these different things that you can do with JavaScript. Back in the day, when I started programming, this is, I don't want to actually tell you my age, but back in the day when I started programming, we used JavaScript in ways that we would kind of just be upset about today. You know, we have a way of programming today that we actually take pride in. Back in the day, we did not take pride in our JavaScript code. It was meant to actually just make things move. Okay, whenever you talked about JavaScript, they said, "Oh, is that language that makes things move on the screen?" Yes, that's exactly what that is. And then Flash came out, and all of a sudden we didn't have a job anymore. Until the frameworks came out, and then all of a sudden we're starting to talk again. We can do animations, we can do cool things, we can actually talk to the server, we can do all these great Ajax things. This is what JavaScript is today. And actually, now that I'm seeing all these non-frameworks or these new sub-frameworks come out, did I just coin a word, sub-framework? Now we're seeing all these things pop out. It's starting to get a whole lot more exciting. I'm not here to excite you, not the least bit. See my picture? Not exciting. Not exciting the least bit. Actually, this is how people look at JavaScript nowadays when you're coming from a framework. When you're coming from jQuery, well, I can't make it move, and I can't do this and that, I can't do an Ajax call. JavaScript seems kind of lame. But what I want to do is I want to take this image here of just basic image object, image native, and translate that into something a little bit more exciting, hopefully. If I can do it, excellent. If I can't, there's more beer over there, and you guys can go ahead and get some more reading. That's good. Practical JavaScript. That's kind of what we do here at CitySearch. Well, CityGrid owns CitySearch. I work for the CitySearch development team. We have to come up with practical solutions. We can't throw a framework at everything. If we try to throw a framework at it, our site gets slower. If our site gets slower, less people come to the site. Less people come to the site, I lose my job. I don't like losing my job, so I gotta create practical JavaScript solutions. That means using image native objects. So something that's so close to JavaScript that it's as fast as it possibly can be. Now, what I want to do is I want to convince you that this is something that you should have in your tool belt. Okay? I have a couple different solutions. Actually, I'm just going to talk about two today that we use the image object to actually solve some real problems here. I was actually speaking with, where did you go? Just one gentleman. He was just talking to me about whether or not I'm using the image object to go ahead and call a JavaScript file. I was like, well, damn, that's what I want to do actually. That would be kind of cool. Image object actually offers us a lot of these different solutions, and hopefully I can inspire you guys to create some of your own solutions with this. But on to the next slide, because everyone knows about it. Did I get this one? Yes, I did. Okay, what can the image object do? Yep, it can handle image data. It can handle image data. That's not a problem. This was actually one of the first objects that we use to start communicating with the server from the client side. So it actually offers us a server communication. Analytics, Google Analytics, all these different analytics services still use images to submit data to the server. Why? Because it's fast. It's easy, and you don't need to go full on Ajax. You don't need a full on header. You don't need a full on communication back and forth. Page performance. Hopefully, I can explain to you guys how we actually use the image object to make your site perform. Okay. What is the image object? It's very simple. This is the basic image object. Create a new image. Nice and easy. I think there's two different arguments. You could do width and height there, but that really doesn't matter to me. I'm not using the image object really to put an image on the page because I would use HTML for that. It has a property called source. Source is really what the image is, right? But it doesn't really have to be a JPEG, PNG, or an image in the end. It could just be a PHP file. It could be anything. You're just calling that, and you're hoping that something's going to happen. Complete. Whether or not the image has finally loaded. This is going to be important for one of the things we're going to be talking about. But the most important thing of the image objects is that the image object has events attached to it already. Versus, you can't hear me back there? You stood right underneath the air conditioner. Yeah. Okay, gotcha. Okay, I'll try to increase my volume here. The objects you're going to create, you're going to try to create events for, but nothing's better than a native event attached to an object because it's already attached to the browser. These are actually attached to parts of the header. So we know if it's a 404. If it's on error, we get a 404, and we know that either we need to get another image or we need to do this process again. On success, get a 200, we know that this actually happened, right? On a board, this is a client-side timeout, so something went wrong on the client side. So these right here, hopefully I can take this image object, show you some code, and hopefully you guys are going to agree with me that the image object is something a little bit more, less like the hobo and more like Bruce Ethan. Okay? I mean, look at that guy. Okay, so let's go ahead and drop out. I was searching for some code. Because back in the day we used to write code, yeah. Back in the day we used to do something like this. Well, you can't see it. Let's do this. We got this. Yeah, Notepad++.
Yeah.
All right, back in the day, we used to use the image object to go ahead and preload images, so when you do a mouse over on your nice menu, it was slick, right? Yep. You got the red background. Oh, wow. And then CSS came out and we're like, job is over. So we did something like this, right? We preloaded everything in, and then we did, can't see it. Oh, this is going to be difficult. Hold on. Okay. This is technology, folks. Okay. And then we did a little image swap. Basically went into mouse over and did, this kind of crappy code. This is how we did it back in the day, and this is all we used the image object for, and that's why we think the image object is a hobo. Now we can use the image object in something a little bit more complex. Okay, so here's a solution that we had to come up with at Sazers. Let me backtrack here. We have business processes associated with image beacons. Everyone know image beacons? No? Okay, image beacon is basically what we use for analytics. So whenever you want to tell the server that someone's been to the page or this business process has happened, we send a pixel to the server. The server then registers it, and there's a whole process for that analytic. Okay, so that's an image beacon. Just sends out a burst, right? So whenever you mouse over something, beacon. Whenever you click on something, beacon. So we have business processes associated with these beacons. So when someone comes to a page, we send out a beacon. A business process happens, someone gets paid. Okay. Whenever money's involved, there's going to be an issue. There's going to be some huge complexity associated with this thing. And from on high, we found out that our image beacons were not firing. Something stupid like that. So from the top level, started coming down. We were losing money. We had to go ahead and figure out the problem. It turns out that everyone, whenever there's a problem, and now you guys as JavaScript developers should know this already, whenever there's a problem, it's not the Java team upstairs, it's not the back end, it's always the JavaScript that's the problem. Okay? JavaScript is always what breaks things, right? Because you guys don't know what you're talking about, and you don't know how to program, so therefore it's probably their fault. Okay? Hopefully we're working on that. Image beacons are not getting sent. We got to figure out there's some kind of problem with this. So what we did is we created. I talked to one of the backend developers. Said, "Listen, I'm getting fired. We we got to talk, okay? I said, can you please create a different service that I can send an image beacon to you, and you're going to go ahead and log this for me if the original beacon doesn't go out. Let's go ahead and go through this code. Maybe this will make more sense as we go through it. So we have this quirky URL, the original business process that goes upstairs that they're saying that wasn't actually happening. Obviously, I can't give you the real URLs. So this is the quirky URL, and this is the backup URL that I talked to my friend into giving me so that we can actually say, okay, if the one upstairs didn't happen, then we're going to go over here to the one I know is going to happen. Okay. We basically set up some polling in here. So so for 5 seconds, we're going to go ahead and do this process. Every half second, we're going to go ahead and poll. Basically, polling is when you're checking to see if this process has been completed. Okay, so every half second, we're going to check. Do the math here, figure out how many tries we're going to do. Start the whole process here. So the beacon, we're going to start, create a new image, right? Very simple. We're going to create this function right here that's going to check. Okay, it's going to check to see if this whole process has happened. This is the polling function. Let's jump over that for right now, so we're not talking about that yet. I'm setting a fail-safe. I'll talk about that later. This is the beacon source. This is how we actually make this whole thing happen. If you assign the source, if you assign a URL to the source, we're going to go ahead and start the whole process. Okay. So basically, I'm sending the quirky URL, the one that is supposed to go upstairs, sending out that beacon and trying to make it work. Start the check. Check is the whole process that we start the polling, and this is what we're going to be looking at. If the beacon is complete, remember complete is one of the properties that the image object has associated with it, so we can check to see whether or not the image is completely downloaded. If the image is complete, then, if it's not complete, then we're going to go ahead and try again. Basically what we're doing is we're setting that timeout, going and doing the polling. And if in the end, when the tries are over, we're going to go ahead and send that second beacon out. Why is this important? If you're following me, it's important because money is absolutely important. Money is what pays your bills, right? If you like money, you need to know how to solve a problem sometimes. This one right here, we're using the image object to go ahead and solve a business problem because they couldn't figure it out upstairs. In the end, we found out that 0 beacons were missing because an image is pretty damn simple. I think you'd all agree. It's very hard to screw this whole thing up. But what we had to do is we had to create this whole function here to go ahead and prove that JavaScript developers are not idiots. That we can go ahead and prove that the people upstairs need to go ahead and debug their own damn code. So sometimes sometimes in JavaScript you need to find practical solutions. And throwing a framework at this wouldn't have worked because we need this to happen as quickly as possible. Okay. How about this? So this is one process where we're talking about we have a business solution for them. There's also performance issues. Sometimes we need our websites to perform, and one of the biggest problems with websites is that we have these huge images. City Search itself, maybe I can pull this up for you guys. Why did I slow server? City Search itself has a lot of images not loaded. Okay, City Search itself has a lot of different images across the page. And some of these things are actually coming from the API, the secret API. Let's go to another page. Notice everything's kind of loading in. We have a prerequisite that we need to make sure our pages load in under 3 seconds. Some of our pages are almost half a megabyte uncompressed. We're not just talking about broadband users. We're also talking about people with maybe lower than broadband. So the problem is that we have too many things on the page all at once. But at the same time, we have product people saying that these things need to be on the page. We have a business team saying that you need to go ahead and put a root system of analytics on everything. So when we click on something, we're going to get a beacon shooting out, so we can actually figure out how much money this person, how much money goes to this group, how much money goes to that group. So there's a lot of things that happen underneath the site that need to actually happen in infrastructure. So we can't just go ahead and reduce things and limit what's on the page. We actually have to deal with whatever design puts out there and then figure out the best way to approach this. The biggest thing that we have on the page are these images. Sometimes from the API, we're going to get an image that's 70K. We can't control that. We're not going and optimizing each of these images. We have millions of images out there. There's no way we can go through each of these images real time, optimize that image, put it out there. It's not something that we can feasibly do at this point. So sometimes these images are coming through at 70K, sometimes they're coming at 4K, sometimes they're coming at 20K, and you really can't manage what you would want to do on a performance website and just optimize everything. So what do? Lazy load. Familiar with lazy loading? Anyone? Okay. Pretty straightforward, simple idea. Put it on the page on demand. We're only going to show the images when it's time to show the images. Okay, so that happens on scroll. So when they come down the page, things are going to load in. You can see them kind of coming in at that last little second. So once you scroll in, you're going to get the image. So lazy loading is a way that you can make your sites perform. So everyone, Amazon.com. Everyone, okay. I buy everything on Amazon. Sure. Amazon. If you go to Amazon.com, you're gonna drop in and they're gonna show you 3, and then you scroll down and then they're gonna show you more of the results. They're a high performance website. This is kind of how you have to do things. You have to drop the page in as soon as possible and then load in those extra assets as you go along. So what we have here, we've kind of cut the code down because there's a whole lot of stuff in there. I don't want to go through a whole other image beacon code thing to do. Once again, we have adding a new image. What we're trying to do here is trying to know when it's time to, when we load in an image, if the image doesn't load in, we want to actually load in a default image so that you always have a professional website. So if you load something in and we get a 404 from the API, then we actually want to load in another image so actually the site still looks good. You can't have a 404 or a little broken image on the page. So starting an image, we're setting the events and we're setting the events and creating a function that's going to go ahead and handle when something loads or when there's an error. We create a little JSON string associated with every object on the page that we're going to lazy load, and it pulls it into configuration. We have fallbacks in there because of that. Let's see, how do I go through this without boring the hell out of you guys? So basically, the whole idea with lazy loading is to pull in the source when there's an error because of the image object. We know that there's a 404. When there's a 404, we're actually going to come in and bring you a fallback. If we don't have a fallback, then we're going to give you about blank, which allows you to use a default on the client side. I don't know if I gave you Bruce Lee yet. What I want to go ahead and just say, kind of wrapping this thing up for you. A lot of times you guys are going to be using jQuery or another framework to go ahead and try to solve the problem. And when it comes to a business process that has already put together, this is the way we do things. We have image beacons. That's what we're going to do. You can't throw a framework at it. When it comes to performance, you can't throw a framework to make something perform because you're adding 30K, 50K to make something less. I mean, it's opposite direction. It's the dark side of commerce. So you need to come back to JavaScript, come back and hang out with the original language and try to find solutions within that original language. The image object is a strange object because it's not just something that holds image data. It's something that has been able to communicate with the server before we had Ajax. It was something that we used when we didn't have that tool belt, that solution tool belt. So I encourage you guys to, as you go through your backbone, as you go through all these new frameworks and all these new things that are coming out, which are exciting, to actually remember where you came from. Remember the JavaScript language. Remember that we have tools in the JavaScript language. You don't need to throw 1,000 lines of code at something that you can have 4 or 5. Okay? It's simple. It's not as exotic. You get up and stand in front of a bunch of people and start talking about something like that. I know it's a hard sell, but at the same time, that right there makes your site perform. That right there makes your site run in 3 seconds instead of megabytes and megabytes of code that you have to overcome somehow. Okay? So I hope that gives you guys an understanding of where I come from as far as development. So go ahead.
Has your opinion on this changed as the average internet user increases their bandwidth over time? At some point, do you decide that, oh, well, maybe our high-traffic website, it's okay to use JQuery on our high-traffic website?
We actually use Mootools, which is better language. Sorry. Yes and no. Yes, about a year ago. No, as I started jumping into mobile web. A lot of the stuff that we're doing mobile web now is we're looking at, there's this new piece of latency that's happening as we're trying to connect with the cell tower. So that right there, mixed in this whole new broadband world is reminiscent of that 56K world that I used to develop for. So yes and no. At some point you got to give and say, listen, I mean, you're saving bits and bytes here, and you're wasting hours and hours. I mean, what's the point? So, yes and no. Sorry to be so coy. Yes.
Don't you have to load in a URL for every single emit that emit is going to be emitted? So, how are you configuring that?
Do I have to load in URL for every? Does my computer want to answer that question?
So if somebody hovers over the about page or hovers over the feature page, you want to emit an event for each of those the stats, right? When you click each one, does each one need a different URL in order for the server to know which image was clicked or which thing was clicked?
Okay, are we talking about like an image mouse over?
Just a click.
Oh, just a click. So are we talking about the
money.
beacon? The money. The beacon. Okay. Yes, this is a problem, especially when you start dealing with animations. A good example is our gallery. So we're trying to. We have multiple beacons getting sent out with one click. So we get a click event, and in the gallery we also want to count a page event because we consider a new image popping up as an actual page. So for our processes, we're sending out 2 beacons. When we did this move from this, not that site, can't see it, from the new site, from the old site, we actually had 2 sites doing their beacons at the same time, so we actually had 4 beacons for every click. We found that there was a big issue because each beacon costs us somewhere around 50 to 60 milliseconds of speed, not just for the download, but also the UI thread was having some issues with that. So when you're animating the image in, so you get this fade effect as it's animating in, it started getting choppy because all those image beacons were popping up at the same time. We solved that by actually creating a queue where we threw all the beacons in there first, let the animation happen, and then threw out the beacons afterwards. Does that answer your question somewhat?
Yes, but also, how does the server then know which beacon corresponds to
right,
which?
it's not just an image, so you can have a query string associated with that. So just the same way that you would request a page and get a different page, you get the same thing with image beacon. And usually we're kind of assigning. Am I giving away too much? We actually, for every name on every anchor that we have, it's like almost like an IP address, but with words instead of numbers. And each of those words correspond to a different place on that page. So when we send it out, we're attaching those different pieces, and it knows exactly where you're clicking on that page. Yes.
Was that a business development decision to use JavaScript for your analytics instead of using Google Analytics or Chartbeat or something like that?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Okay, so yeah, this is definitely something I can't put too much of an answer to because it is an internal process that we do. But we have our own analytic system.
Is that based on behavioral targeting? You guys, is that just so that you guys can kind of keep that within your sandbox?
I think it's like a 10-year-old program actually.
Right.
So I believe that predates some of these companies, but the point of it was that if we're going to be doing analytics for 10 years on this business, we might as well just develop it ourselves. In retrospect, when Google Analytics comes out, and you're looking at this and saying, this is nicer because we got graphs, and this one is a log file.
It just kind of, when you have companies like Omniture or Metrics doing high-end, the Rolls-Royce of analytics, where it's very powerful and it's for a bigger business, it makes sense to sometimes spend that money. It's just one of those things where if you're doing it from the get-go and you can customize it, then
we do actually use Google Analytics also. So we have a whole analytic team that uses Google Analytics to go ahead and decide page traffic and still using nice fun graphs. Then we have the business group that goes ahead and says we need to make sure that these image beacons get sent out for these business processes. Some of these beacons, Google, it's not the same thing as for instance, we want to send out an image beacon when a phone number is shown on the page, because then we're actually getting money for that. Google isn't really the best place for that, especially when you start having 16, 17 million people come to your site on a monthly basis. You get massive amounts of information there, so it gets kind of difficult sometimes. But I see your point, absolutely.
Sure.
Does anyone else want to talk about the image object? Go ahead.
So on the images, you say that you were, so you have some dummy placement image there, and then you would use like a JSON string.
Yeah.
So how are you sending your JSON string? Is it just
okay, so putting a little data property inside each HTML object that we're going to go ahead and lazy load. We're going to go ahead and put a class inside that object also. We're going to go ahead and select all of the called lazy load class, all the lazy load class elements, and then from each of those elements, we're going to go ahead and grab out their config, basically data dash config. That's going to be a JSON object. I use JSON because it's JavaScript at that point.
How do you seed it? Like, is it like a string literal that then you parse out?
One more time.
Is it like you have a data config and you say it's JSON, so you have to parse it because like a data dash something, it's it's always a string on markup.
Yes, it's always a string in the markup. The only thing I don't like about that is that we're going to the DOM to go ahead and pull out this data.
So how do you turn it into a JSON?
There's a couple different ways. Using the framework, you can just do the JSON.
Oh, so you do parse it?
Yes, we do absolutely do parse it, so we can use it as a native object. I've seen some other ways where you're kind of passing it as a return from a anonymous function, but there's some different ways of doing that. Yeah.
You mentioned that you were blocking the UI thread when you were doing these image things.
Yeah.
Why, or have you guys tried web workers to solve that problem?
I've started working with web workers. What I've found with web workers is that it's not what you think they are. Well, web workers are supposed to be something that works within a sandbox almost. They have their own kind of sandbox where they deal with data and then they pop out some information. I've tried working with web workers to try to put things that I want to process in there and let it happen, but I found it's very difficult to get things back out of it. So I haven't really spent a lot of time with web workers, but that was the slow point on that one. I actually I started with that, trying to use web workers, and then ended up creating that queue because I could not get that to work.
Yeah, so sometimes I stare at bestcode.js in horror because I'm trying to figure out what all of that is doing when it's just inserting an image beacon on the page to make a request.
Yeah.
And I wonder, but I know that one of the things it's doing is like, delaying, say, the click of a link so that the image beacon can fire before the person leaves the page.
Yeah.
Have you found just any way around that? that delay, that 500 millisecond delay to make sure the person that beacon goes before they leave the page?
Yeah, the code that we wrote here for the beacon, don't leave, we need more time, right here, this quick send, is basically, the quick send is we're adding an on unload event, and we're putting a function associated with that. So it's like, this person's leaving, we got to do something quick. So in this one, we're stopping the tries altogether. We're just trying that function one last time. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, then we got some business people yelling at us. That right there, an on unload event, which isn't. At first, when I started with the on unload event, I had this thought that Internet Explorer would not have this for it, but for some reason it actually works in Internet Explorer and works in all the browsers that we support. So try that out.
So you don't do anything tricky with like trying to capture the click event?
Well, it depends. Okay, so the one I spoke with you about, where we're taking and putting these things in a queue, that's when we're capturing things for the animation to happen. But if they're leaving the page, we need to get those things out as soon as possible. And not much trickiness at that point, from what I can know.
So was there like a business or a marketing decision to forego image search SEO for faster initial download?
One more time?
Because you kind of lose image search SEO.
Okay.
So was there like a intentional business or marketing decision to forego that?
Decisions. Marketing, business decisions. That's a hard word.
I'm just wondering if maybe it wasn't as valuable to you guys to have image search versus.
No, it's really not. A lot of the images that we're going to have on our site, are third-party resourced images. So sometimes they're coming from the API from CityGrid, which I would all encourage you guys if you're developing to use CityGrid APIs. They're coming from the CityGrid API, so sometimes it's someone else's resource. So as far as SEO goes, I'm not a master SEO guy, but I know that using someone else's information may not be the best thing. Sometimes they're such small images, it doesn't really matter if you wouldn't want them pulled in the search anyways. Our SEO that we drive is more so based upon our textual content, like our tips and reviews and things like that. So no, we really haven't delved too much in that. What is your? I don't want to call you out on that one, but what have you done with image SEO? I mean, how has it benefited your site?
Oh, it's just ever since I work at a fashion college, and fashion pictures are a big part of our content we're serving. Okay. And that's always a question at the table.
Do you get a lot of value from that, or?
Accordingly, I mean,
really?
That's what our
that's great.
Marketing people tell us.
That's your part. Okay. No, that's cool. I mean, it's a new one for me. It's I know that there's always something new popping up in the SEO world, and they're always trying to sell it. So it's like you never know sometimes.
Well, I was going to say, do you necessarily care if you're ranking for thumbnails? Generally, your full-size image is still going to be showing up in search results. So
we don't. We haven't really spent too much time on our SEO guru here. It's kind of focused us on something else. So, how many of you, just to share a answer, maybe it's just in my own head. How many of you guys trust SEO people? Just one or two. Okay. I don't know. Ever since SEO came out as a new job, I've always been like, this guy is.
Well, he's looking at a black box and telling you what's inside the black box.
It's like I look in that black box, I never see what he sees though. I'm not dogging what you say at all. It's actually a really interesting approach to SEO. I'd like to go ahead and check
You're
that out.
setting the image tags with the payload though, right? So you're setting image tags with the payload using JavaScript.
But without a source.
So negative on the image tags. Back in the day, we used to use image tags and then do some preloading up here. Now, for image beacons, we're just going to go ahead and create an image object itself. There's no tag associated with that. You can use a tag. I would suggest if you have to have a process where there's JavaScript is not going to be running on the site, if it's going to be broken, if it's going to be in some other browser, then putting it into an image tag, and then sending out that beacon from that image tag.
Not for the beacons, for the lazy loading.
Oh, gotcha. Go ahead. Sorry.
So are you sending in image tags for images and then stripping?
No. Yeah. Okay. So what we're doing is throwing an about blank inside the source itself. So it defaults to nothing using the client default. So each of these pages, as it loads through, we're not getting anything loaded in that image.
But you can still put alt tags on your image.
We do. Yeah.
Right. So it would be SEO compliant.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Sorry.
I was just wondering why you would want to SEO beacon tags. I can see why you would want to SEO like thumbnails.
Right.
And you would be able to
for beacons, absolutely not. Yeah. We're going to create beacons through the JavaScript. We're not going to have a tag for that. Yeah.
What does about blank render do? I never thought about doing that.
Sorry?
What does about blank? Because like if you put in an empty source,
Yep.
it's like depending on what browser, it's either gonna be just like nothing or a broken image.
Yeah, that's one of the things we wanted to avoid. We started seeing it in the console. We started seeing all these 404s as we're loading these exams. Like, what the heck is all these 404s?
Not even 404, just like a source equals empty string. It's like a broken image and like there's still 404 error because there's nothing being requested.
Right.
But on render of the UI, I think it's like Firefox would be a broken image. It has like the default broken image.
Right,
like how do you prevent that's about blank?
That's why we
do
use
that.
The about blank. Yeah.
Huh.
So that's and it's client side, so it's as fast as it can be.
Yeah, it's very interesting use.
Okay. If you guys have any other questions after that, I'd love to answer them. But we have another person here. I'd like to say one last thing. CityGrid, we are hiring. We have plenty of positions for people, for smart people who like money. So if you like money, we got jobs for you. If you like the building, the people here are great. It's a great atmosphere. You'll really enjoy yourself here. If you guys are all in Los Angeles, this is probably a pretty quick thing. If you got to come over to the 405 like I do, it sucks sometimes, but it's good when you get here. So thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me afterwards.